December 19th, 2:47 in the morning. Natalia Petrova wakes up in her apartment in Rostov, 600 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, to the sound of explosions rattling her windows. She grabs her phone. Social media is exploding, not with propaganda, with panic. Within an hour, people in Voronezh are posting videos of fires lighting up the sky. Then Kursk, then Bryansk. This isn't about one strike. This is about what happens next. Because Ukraine didn't just hit Russian territory that night. They triggered something Putin has been desperately trying to prevent for 3 years. A chain reaction that's now tearing through Russia's economy, its military, its society, and most dangerously the minds of ordinary Russians who are finally asking, what the hell are we doing this for? Let me show you exactly how Putin's Russia is falling apart from the inside out. Every week, Russia lights $2.7 billion on fire. Imagine taking $2.7 billion, enough money to run an entire Russian region for a year, and just burning it every single week. That's not a metaphor. That's Russia's actual war spending right now. According to Russia's own defense ministry, and they tried to bury this announcement, total military spending for 2025 hit $198.8 billion. That's 20% more than they planned. That's 7.3% of Russia's entire GDP. Gone. Vanished into Ukraine. Now, Putin's propagandists will tell you the economy is growing. And technically, they're not lying. Russia's GDP is up. But here's what they don't mention. According to Rosstat, Russia's own statistics agency, 2/3 of that growth comes from one thing: military production. That's it. Tanks, missiles, artillery shells, body bags. Strip away the defense industry and Russia's economy isn't growing. It's collapsing in slow motion. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute confirmed what Russian economists are too terrified to say out loud. Russia now spends more money on this war than it spends on healthcare, education, and infrastructure combined. Think about that. More on killing Ukrainians than keeping Russians alive. And here's the beautiful irony that Ukraine figured out months ago. Every depot they destroy, every ammunition dump they blow up, every oil refinery they set ablaze, it doesn't just remove military assets. It forces Russia to spend even more money replacing them. Money Russia doesn't have. It's not a war economy. It's a death spiral wrapped in propaganda. And it's accelerating. The weak Russian workers stopped getting paid. December 20th, Moscow time. Russia's Federal Service for Labor and Employment publishes their latest report. Buried on page 7 is a number that should have made international headlines. 70,000 complaints about unpaid wages in the first 2 weeks of December alone. 70,000. That's 60% higher than last year. And it gets worse. Of those complaints, 26,000 were specifically about salaries being delayed or withheld entirely. These aren't soldiers complaining about combat pay. These are everyday Russians, factory workers in Yekaterinburg, office employees in Novosibirsk, construction crews in Kazan, people living hundreds, sometimes thousands of kilometers from any battlefield, and they can't pay their bills. Corporate profits across Russia dropped 7.7% in 2025. Companies are hemorrhaging cash. By October, wage arrears, money Russian companies owe their workers but simply cannot pay, reached 2.2 billion rubles. That's triple what it was last year. The worst it's been since August 2020, during the height of COVID lockdowns. But wait, it gets absolutely bonkers. While teachers, nurses, factory workers, and everyday Russians are getting stiffed on their paychecks, Russian prisoners are making bank. The average prisoner salary in 2025, 33,000 rubles per month. That's a 124% increase since 2019. The average teacher salary in 73 Russian regions, below the legal minimum wage of 22,400 rubles. Let me repeat that. Russia pays its prisoners more than it pays the people educating its children. And Russians are noticing. They're doing the math. They're seeing their paychecks shrink while defense contractors get rich. They're watching their kids sit in crumbling schools with teacher shortages while Moscow parades new tanks through Red Square. The cognitive dissonance is breaking down, and that's when things get dangerous for Putin. The New Year's Eve that broke Russia's heart. If you really want to understand how bad things have gotten inside Russia, forget the economic data for a second. Look at what's happening right now. New Year's Eve, the most important, most sacred, most emotionally significant holiday on the Russian calendar. It's not just a party. It's when Russians, no matter how poor, no matter how rich, come together with family, share elaborate meals, exchange gifts, and celebrate being alive. Except this year, they can't afford to. According to Ukrainian intelligence, and they've been tracking consumer behavior across Russia, the average Russian family has cut their New Year's budget in half, from 28,000 rubles last year to just 14,000 this year. They're canceling trips to see grandparents. They're skipping traditional foods like caviar, smoked salmon, and expensive chocolates. They're staying home because train tickets cost too much, hotel rooms cost too much, everything costs too much. Food inflation has exploded across Russia throughout 2025. Utility costs keep climbing. Western sanctions pulled familiar brands off the shelves. No more Coca-Cola, no more McDonald's, no more of the small comforts that made life bearable. And now, during the 1 week of the year that's supposed to feel special, Russians are sitting in their apartments calculating whether they can afford butter for their holiday meal. Ukrainian intelligence concluded their report with something genuinely heartbreaking. New Year's Eve in Russia is no longer a large-scale and joyful holiday. It has become a restrained, psychologically tense event marked by austerity and growing social fatigue. When a nation can't celebrate the one holiday that holds it together emotionally, when families can't afford to be families, that nation is fracturing at its core, and Putin knows it. Moscow spent millions decorating Red Square with elaborate light displays, trying to project normalcy and joy. But you can't decorate away empty wallets. You can't light up a Christmas tree and make people forget their sons are dying in Ukraine. Nobody wants to die for Putin anymore. Now here's where the chain reaction becomes truly unstoppable. The Institute for the Study of War just published findings that should absolutely terrify the Kremlin. Despite offering insane financial incentives, some regions are promising several million rubles as signing bonuses. Russia can't get people to volunteer for the war anymore. Recruitment numbers are dropping fast. For 3 years, Putin avoided announcing a full mobilization because he knew what would happen. Protests, riots, political instability. Instead, he bribed volunteers with cash and emptied the prisons, promising criminals freedom in exchange for service. But that well just ran dry. Regional recruitment offices have raised signing bonuses by an average of 500,000 rubles every 3 to 4 months, and still, fewer people show up. The Institute's analysis concluded that everyone who wanted to make money from the war has already signed up. Everyone else is looking at the odds and saying no. Young Russian men are watching their neighbors come home in zinc coffins, or not come home at all. They're hearing stories from the front lines about inadequate equipment, brutal conditions, and officers who treat them like cannon fodder. And they're doing the math. No amount of money is worth dying for a war that nobody can explain anymore. Putin now faces an impossible choice. He can announce another mobilization, which would trigger the exact political crisis he's been avoiding, or he can keep bleeding soldiers on the front lines until his military literally runs out of manpower. Either way, he loses. The one question that will end Putin. The most dangerous chain reaction isn't economic, it isn't military, it's happening inside the minds of ordinary Russians. A poll conducted back in September showed that the majority of Russians now favor peace talks over continuing the war. That number has only grown as the economic pain intensifies, as more families receive death notifications, as life becomes harder and harder to afford. Russians are connecting dots Putin never wanted them to see. Their wages disappear while defense contractors buy mansions. Their schools crumble while the military gets billions. Their sons die while Putin's inner circle gets richer. And they're starting to ask the one question that terrifies Putin more than any Ukrainian missile, more than any Western sanction, more than anything else. Why are we doing this? Propaganda can't answer that question. It can't pay overdue salaries. It can't fill empty grocery stores. It can't resurrect the dead. And it absolutely cannot make people celebrate a holiday they can no longer afford. When empires collapse from within, Ukraine didn't just strike Russian territory on December 19th. They exposed the fundamental truth Putin has spent 3 years trying to hide. Russia cannot sustain this war. Not economically, The spending is unsustainable, not militarily. The volunteers have stopped coming, not psychologically. The people are breaking. Every Ukrainian strike forces more spending. Every ruble spent is stolen from Russian citizens. Every sacrifice pushes ordinary people closer to the breaking point. The chain reaction isn't coming. It's here. It's now. It's accelerating across every corner of Russia. Putin built his empire on lies, violence, and the promise that Russians would be better off under his rule. But empires collapse when the people holding them up decide they're done carrying the weight. Russians are tired, they're broke, they're angry, and they're finally understanding that Putin values this war more than he values them. The dominoes are falling, the chain reaction is unstoppable, and Putin is watching everything he built disintegrate. One explosion, one unpaid wage, one ruined holiday at a time.
Okay guys, this was my video, and please do like, subscribe, share my video. I will more efforts for you.